Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things. In this very lovely episode, you will hear Kartic Vaidyanathan sharing his journey from starting as a student in IIT Madras and becoming a visiting faculty for life skills, and starting as a developer and moving into quality and becoming from product to services. And he also shares very great understanding of how do you learn, how do you be curious. And he ends with how a person can be successful with a combination of their passion and curiosity. Creating that understanding of oneself builds a firm foundation. Listen on. Welcome to the Software People Stories, Kartik. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
To our listeners, would you like to introduce yourself, Kartik? I know you in different avatars. So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I think I've been trying to discover who I am to define myself for a long time. So I keep changing my own definition of who I am for a while. Until recently, when I got interviewed by Dr. Ramya Ranganathan, and she, in her description, gave me something which felt closest to what I am. Okay, as of this moment. And I've considered myself a learner, mentor, gamification person, etc., etc. But what she said really is the closest to what I think I want to be. Nurturer of the human spirit and growth is what she mentioned. So I think I'll retain with that.
Wow, amazing. I did hear your interview. It is a very beautiful interview of moving away from a 9 to 5 job. For those listeners who wants to listen in, please listen to the video interview between Kartik and Dr. Ramya. It is an amazing one as well, Kartik. So I know you from the time that you were part of Infosys and their product division. So that's where you started, right? Before that, was there any early understanding of technology or understanding of engineering before you joined IIT Madras, Kartik?
To be honest, very nothing at all. I don't know what I was venturing into. In fact, I just wrote IIT because everybody wrote IIT. Just like the join the group kind of a thing, right? Those days, okay, IIT was considered a premium college. Okay, let's join what people are doing to be with the crowd. Of course, one thing though is I was interested in science. I mean, as a part of my school studies, science and maths was an area of my interest for sure. Actually, I didn't have any idea of science, technology, engineering, nothing of that sort until it was just some target that people wanted to achieve. And then I had to discover what engineering technology was only when I joined the college.
I know IIT Madras is one of the premium institutes, and even today, everybody vies for it, right? In fact, some of the children I know, they are studying right from their 6th grade. So for one exam, one curriculum, right? What was your early childhood experience while preparing for that? Was it only the 11th and 12th that you started off, Karthik, or was it more of that 7, 8 years of studying?
Oh, no, no. I think those days, I don't think it was even there, the 7, 8 years. Those days, there were no Fiji, Akash, Byju's, etc. It was only the only things that existed was Brilliance and Agarwal tutorials. And then a lot of them were individual teachers who taught physics, chemistry, mathematics were taught individually by teachers, not a part of any particular group. In most of the cases, the classes started at 11th and ran into the 12th. There were a few cases where I believe the very small percentage of people started off in 9th and 10th, but that's only a fractional thing. Back in the 90s, it was only in 11th and 12th. Only in the last 10, 15 years, it has become like a craze from 6th and 7th standard onwards.
You are a faculty today at IIT Madras, being a premium institute, but also being a faculty there. How has that happened, and how do you see yourself? I know you're talking about being a nurturer of human spirit. How has that transformed you personally?
Okay. So this again did not happen by plan, but I'll narrate the sequence of events that happened. But before that, I'll clarify one thing. I'm a visiting guest or a visiting faculty. I'm not a permanent faculty there. The courses that I teach are, as a visiting faculty, are those that are nothing to do with science or technology or management, and probably more aligned to what I said earlier, nurturing the human spirit. It so happened, and all of these are the brainchild of the previous dean of students, Shivakumar Srinivasan, and of course the previous deans who worked, who believed that students need interventions beyond the core science and technology in order for them to become holistic leaders. Because today we are bombarding children and young adults with a lot of technical stuff, which improves, which is very IQ focused. There is hardly, if any, EQ focus, EQ, soft skills, and life skills. I'm calling three different terms. I'll explain why later. But broadly, outside of IQ or the technology knowledge, we don't have interventions that will help, because these are the ones that are going to matter as the adults grow, young adults grow into the whether they choose the corporate world or the academic world, research, whatever. The soft skills and one's understanding of oneself is going to be playing a bigger role 10 to 15 years down the line and much beyond in life. So not having this understanding and simply getting caught in the rat race, or not having a clarity of what to do, is a challenge that many of us have undergone ourselves. We ourselves get an idea of the world much better only in our 30s and 40s. If we compare how we were as students, now it was such a narrow idea of the world. In fact, hardly any idea of the world existed. If you had asked me what you will want to do at that age, we would have given some answers which will mostly be a copy of what somebody else said. X wants to join this company, so I want to become join that company. Or Y wants to go abroad, I also want to go abroad. So it is more driven by very limited knowledge of your peers or parents or whatever it is. That so a small ecosystem. There was no understanding of what you really wanted, what you are capable as an individual, what your strengths and weaknesses are. No systems existed. Nobody was there to guide. There was enough guidance available once you decided what you do. Right? For example, if you want to go abroad, everything was, you can always ask your senior, your professor, all that will be in place. If you want to join a job, you want to do MBA, all that is known. But what do you want to do? That itself was, there was no support systems and structures existing back then. And that was not true only of IIT. I think the world was like that everywhere. Right? India was in that stage there. But over a period of time, I think many professors and not just in IIT, I think everywhere they've realized the importance of this understanding, self-awareness, a broader understanding that each one of us, just because we are in a same college or have chosen a particular stream, are not necessarily similar individuals. Each one of us is different. And it is important to create that self-awareness in that particular person for them to take independent calls in terms of what will work out for them. So they created what is called, and many students used to struggle, and still they do, not just in IIT, everywhere, about how to handle change. The school to college is a very significant change, particularly when it becomes a residential campus, when you have to step out of your comfort of your home. All along, you are in the comfort of your family, where the only pressure was the academic pressure. But when you go out, step out, and live in a new place, new environment, it's going to be a big challenge adapting to. You'll meet people of different cultures, you'll meet people of different natures. That is a significant change. And getting along with others is one of the biggest traits that has been identified by the previous trait, and not all of us are good at it, unless that needs a constant work. So that is one. Another thing is the managing the overall change itself.
Change from one firm to the other, even if it is in the same location.
Right.
Within the same organization, if it is different department or different,
Yes.
and adapting to change is super critical. So that
Super
is
critical.
the focus areas in.
Yes, and you said it beautifully. In the corporate world, the adapting to change never stops. Getting along with people, getting the art of getting along with people, it's not an easy thing. It's a lifelong thing. So two people, the earlier dean, Professor Shiva Srinivasan, and another person by name Shiva Subramaniam, who was the head of innovation earlier in IIT Madras. He runs his own firm called Biomimicry. those two created a course called Life Skills. Focuses on these two aspects: getting along. How do you facilitate sessions so that the students understand the importance of getting along with each other, the freshers who join the college, and how do they learn to manage change? Because there's so much of conflict that is going on. On the one hand, you've come up with, after so many years of pressure, competitive exam pressure. Honestly, your social skills have gone down because you've been isolated, right? It is not just the pandemic that isolates. If you study for any competitive exam, all your hobbies, interests, your basic interaction with friends all come to a standstill. Even for the brighter student, it takes a backseat. Now, that has to be rejuvenated. Not everybody loses it, but there are some people who have the challenges. So, create interventions in the form of these courses. And they have been doing this course, and I think, if I'm remembering right, this is the 10th year they have, of the course in IIT Madras that is offered for the first year students. I happened to join this course around 2018, if I remember right, when my friend Krishnan introduced me to IIT Madras back. Although I'm an alumnus, I didn't know that I can go to the alumnus back and I can find avenues. It took a long time for me to do this step, although he advised me in 2017 itself. But the moment I got introduced, when I got to know Professor Shivakumar's work, I thought this is something that is significantly needed, because I have been myself had a big struggle over the many years to realize that this is the most important skill to be developed. So it's more an experiential learning for me, and I thought this, if I can contribute in some form, nothing like it. Because no matter the technology can advance, you can do anything in the IQ world, but finally we are all humans. So first, we need to have skills related to what a human needs in this world. So I think somewhere this is giving that intervention. So that's how I got into life skills in 3 years back.
Okay. Excellent. I love this journey of not just from you being going through the self-discovery, but also ensuring that others kind of accelerate towards that. Kartik, you started as a engineer back in Infosys, part of a product team, Yantra. How has that worked? And can you contrast that initial days of learning software, being part of the, growing, or rather, I should say, exploding software industry at those days? Any early recollections of stories that you can share?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was a wonderful team. I can say that because I didn't know initially what is the difference between a service and a product when I joined. But later I discovered what product stood for, and it was a product called WMS Yantra, which is warehouse management system, developed it was earlier a project within Infosys, done for different clients. But over a period of time, it spun off into a separate entity called Yantra Corporation. And the work involved developing a end-to-end warehouse management system which is capable of receiving inventory, storage, picking, packing, shipping of goods, software to enable the entire thing. Because shipping and logistics always has been a critical part of any economy, and this was one way of automating and empowering clients to use the software to do that. See, back then it was character user interface. I think we used a editor called Jam. More than the technology, I would say. In fact, I was into the quality assurance team from the day one. Although I spent some amount of time in maintenance and development, a lot of my time has been in business facing functions, which is more like a business analyst kind of a thing. Even quality assurance, you needed to understand the use of the software by the clients. And later I was into production support, which again was directly product usage. So I think product support and quality assurance where most of my time was spent there. And it was a very wonderful experience because it was a startup. I was young then, so high energy startup with all the people around giving that energy, because you are an average of the team that you are a part of. I always believe that. So if the people around you are high energy, you automatically become high energy. And because the company was small, it was lovely in another way. There is things will move quickly. People can contact each other. I mean, in large companies, the challenge is communication and all that. So here you need to just walk out. Anybody is in a walking distance, including the CEO. Of course, you don't talk to the CEO every day, but I'm saying technically it's reachable in a startup. The company had hardly 50 to 100 people. It was all in a single campus. Later, of course, the company grew and it became like a mid-sized company, etc.
I think I can imagine being a small firm with lots of learning, right? Any startup would be like 8, 12 hours of very highly invigorating kind of a work where you did, and you also have suddenly like explosion of learning also. I think you from a product team, you also moved to the Yatra team after a while. And you shifted to Cognizant from there to a services firm. So why did that happen?
So after, you see, for the first 6 to 8 years, I was somewhat connected with the product or what business the company was with. Over a period of time, you start taking leadership positions. You become a test lead or a QA lead. Then you become a QA manager. All that is nice because you like to grow in the organization, designation wise. But then I realized that I got caught into it. So my learning stopped. I stopped learning for a brief period of time because I took my role literally. Like manager means managing, right? I didn't spend time being a, I won't say engineer necessarily, but of course, to be honest, one thing is there was no time, right? I mean, the work was tight. You didn't have, unless you put in your conscious extra effort, your time was spent in administrative work a lot of times, resource hiring, resource retention, performance appraisal, project reporting, etc. All these are important for the company, but they don't over a period of time necessarily give you the best joy, right? I mean, so I did that for quite a long time. On the one hand, the ego was asking for growth in terms of designation. On the other hand, the spirit was struggling with, are you doing the right thing? Something is wrong. So there was a disconnect inside. The one reason that prompted me was to switch to Cognizant was not necessarily driven by this quest. There were two drivers of it. One is I wanted to shift to hometown Chennai to be with my family, parents. The second was I wanted to get out of being with the same team for a long time. It was almost 14 years. I joined in 96 and by 2010 it was 14 years in the same company. Even if the product and service product was great, even if I was learning, right, there was this comfort zone, whether things are working because I know the people or things are working because I'm contributing, right? I wanted to, it was getting too cozy, which is not a good thing. So I thought, let me switch over to a different firm for sure to see whether I have learned anything. Can I put my learning to use in a different company? There's no better test than that. I had two choices, of course, products and services, but then Chennai again was not known for product companies, not many at least. There were a few, but not to the extent that was there in Bangalore. But I don't want to go into a lot of unknowns, change of city, change of culture, shift from product to services. I didn't want to take up any domain. So I thought there has to be something in common. So testing was one of my fortes, which I had worked in a lot of my life was in quality assurance. And at that time, Cognizant was the leading test services provider among all the IT majors. So I applied for Cognizant and happened to get it, and that's how the shift happened.
Very nice. You were saying about decisions, right? Sometimes one is the personal decision. A lot of software people take decisions for the personal reason. Software also gives that great platform where you can shift to a different region or different place. Sometimes we overlook that sort of a benefit that we have an option to choose, right?
No, I totally agree with you. I think we should be really grateful. You are absolutely right. If we were working in a factory or in an industry where this choice was not at all possible, you had to shift your families there or reconcile to the constraints of that work environment. And what if either Bangalore nor Chennai did not have any of these software, right? I mean, other options to work. You bring up a very important point. Luckily, those things were very conducive. Despite all the challenges of the software industry, we had options in South India and quite a few of them.
Very true. So when you're saying about testing your own testing journey from a product to moving into a services, being a tester, and even the testing industry, right, has changed dramatically. When I joined, there was no concept of a test engineer. There'll always be somebody who will certify that whether this can go to release. And most of the time, the certifying authority need not be from a testing person. Could be an overall person who knows that everything is working. And later we added something called a QA analyst, right? And then now in our current agile ways of working, if we call them SDET, right? The software development engineer and tester. So I mean, the role itself has changed dramatically because of some of the technology that is changing underlying, right? Now, how have you traced this change in your career?
Yeah. So it is very good that you're asking this question, because when I joined Infosys in that first project Yantra, until my batch had joined, there was no test engineer per se. The software developer used to develop it, test it, and ship it, right? That was the time they created a dedicated small testing team, because the previous version of the product developed so many problems. The customer was very unhappy, and the leadership team decided that we had to dedicate time. We cannot accept a bad name from our clients. We have to invest significant time by independent testing, because software developers, although it's not conscious, right? You don't give a critical external eye to your own code. I mean, you get caught in your logic. Always, there is always a neutral review that helps you take a better look at yourself, right? So that independent testing, although a developer is perfectly capable of testing, that objective independent testing need was felt then. So an independent QA team was created for this project for the first time. It was probably one of the first in the company itself at that time, I would say. If not the first, I would say one of the first, definitely. And I think over a period of time, what happened is all companies started realizing that in their own way, and test services started growing, because the software finally is the same. So everywhere it's the same problem, rushed up deliveries, quick requirements problem, and all those miscellaneous things. And when I decided to return to services in 2010, I was surprised that I'll narrate one incident. Okay, the Cognizant was the leading test services provider. If I may not exactly be remembering the revenue, but significant revenue coming from testing. In fact, testing in Cognizant touched the billion revenue mark in 2012 or 2013. Billion revenue mark. They celebrated it,
Okay,
and
okay.
then 2 billion revenue in 2016. Which means at 2010 it must have been something like 600 million or something like that. Significant, very significant. Contrast this to 96 when I joined the testing team. All my peers and friends said, "You have no career. Please switch over to development. They're just putting you as a dummy in testing, and nobody's going to teach you coding, etc." This was an honest feedback, and this did not last only in Infosys in 96. This lasted a long time. Testing was not perceived on par, and it continued. Despite testing revenue being significantly high in 2010, 2011, testing was considered one grade lower. To be fair, in fact, initially it used to make me frustrated, worried, etc. But objectively looking at it, later I realized that it's a secondary function. See, developers are the primary people. Okay, let's face it. That doesn't mean that testing is any secondary, because you're doing an independent quality audit, but you have to be objective enough saying that any secondary provider can be eliminated at any point in time, which is what is happening in testing now. Because it grew so big, the client started questioning, why should I pay for your development team? Why should I pay for your testing team? Why don't you get it right the first time? It's a fair question. And then testing started shrinking. Shrinking as in the right way, I would say. Developer testing, tester at one for a long time, it's like always there is a big fight between them. Developers will never say that you guys are theoretical testers. There will not be such a case in production. Testers will say, no, we have the requirements, you didn't test it, and there will be all kinds of things. See, that honest collaboration between developers and testers. I mean, let's face it, these are all youngsters, right? Maybe 10 years down the line, when you have some amount of leadership experience, you've seen the world, you will not talk like this, but bulk of the crowd in software is young. Now, objectively looking at it, there was a need for everything to come together, right? The customer can't keep paying for everything. You have to get it right. How do you get it right? There are different ways. And then that's where we brought up this waterfall to agile transition also was happening, right? Because we were developing huge pieces of software, investing significant amount of time to test, and then go back to developers, fix it and all that. The world started adapting agile. And now it's moved more into DevOps, right? So it's all coming for the better, I would say. All functions are needed, all functions are respected, but it is not necessarily two teams. In some cases, it's multiple teams. Sometimes it's the single person. They call that full stack developer or something. I don't know whether I'm using the right term, but whatever it is, one person needs to be a master of several things of the entire thing. That's how it is.
Yeah, right now, full stack developer is more around somebody who can actually do both from a back end, front end, as well as somebody who can also do some level of mobile app developer. And the T-shaped engineer is another term that is being used a lot, right? Quality engineering also has shifted quite a bit in terms of ensuring that more automation is there so that repetitiveness, manual intervention is lesser. Given that journey, I want to trace back to the you are an entrepreneur. You are running your own firm, learn to play, which I have personally experienced that in terms of learning and being able to apply that. Can you share some anecdotes as to how did you come upon this sort of gaming?
See, it took about 15 years of me and a lot of introspection. It didn't come overnight. I realized that in some form or the other, I was connected with learning. I didn't know what my right role that I would enjoy doing permanently was. It took a lot of time, very different experiences, both positive and negative, to lead me towards this. Okay. For example, in the earliest days, I would say I would try and see, can we do video recording and make it available for the new trainees to learn? Because that was the most novel thing that was possible back then. I'm talking about 15 years back. Now, if you see the correlation to learning itself, right? The key part of learning is engagement with the audience and making it interactive. Now, I've done a lot of faculty development programs. The first question I pose is, what is your number one challenge in your classrooms today? The word interactivity, attention, engagement come in the center. There are other challenges, of course. Every learner needs to get engaged with the speaker or the teacher, right? The facilitator. This needs and to tap into the emotional side of the learner. I'm just taking a slight detour, I know that, but I'll come back to your main question. The emotional part and the engagement part is critical, and that can be achieved in multiple ways. I'll give you sample examples. Videos work beautifully compared to a faculty speaking. Well made videos. That's because we are appealing to the audio visual part of our mind. Audio visual learning works. Storytelling works. It's not easy to create stories, but if you manage to create stories and narrate during classes, when I say classes, I don't necessarily mean educational institutions, it is corporate learning also. You must be aware of a lot of corporate storytellers who are getting popular. That's because storytelling appeals to the emotional part of the mind. Now, games are another variety that appeals to the emotional part of the brain. All of these somewhere tickle the minds, the hormones related to happiness. It could be most likely it is dopamine, which causes the attention and stickiness to what is being taught. There are several studies that state that the average attention span of our individual is decreasing. It's definitely not going to be more than 10 minutes for sure. And if you lecture either in a corporate training session or if you lecture in a classroom, the learners are not going to be engaged. This is exactly where we need videos, we need stories, we need games. They give that well needed break. I'm not saying games will replace teaching, but games offer a very significant intervention in the form of bringing back engagement and interactivity.
I am a big believer of training from the back of the room by Sharon. So what the theory or a concept is very similar to what you said. You design games. It could be based on interaction, or it could be actually learning from each other. If you have a classroom, particularly adults, right? Rather than hearing from one person, the trainer becomes a facilitator who only just nudges them towards the direction. And the learning or the enthusiasm to learn comes automatically from
Yes.
the learner. Are you also doing something to unlearn the learning part of it? Can you share some of these things, some things that our listeners can take away? So I think even a simple things of changing from one model to other, there is a immediate resistance, right? When we talk about change at the corporate level, how can you reduce that resistance from with oneself?
Before I answer your question, I'll narrate two other benefits of games. And you stated beautifully first, it is the shift from being a teacher or a faculty or a trainer to a facilitator. You enable learning in the classroom. It's a learning flow has to happen in that ecosystem and not a one-way journey, right? That is fundamentally the purpose of a facilitator. And if you are a good facilitator, You can use any tool, storytelling. You can go with your usual. There are 100 other techniques available for facilitation. Games are a very significant part of that. But if you use games, it will additionally help you as a facilitator. Now, the two other benefits of games I would like to highlight are games ensure a fail-safe environment. By fail-safe environment, what I mean is whether it is children or adults at any age, a lot of us are hesitant to open up our mouths in when a question is asked in a classroom. And even if the facilitator is very, very conducive, he's not going to be like, why is this happening? It's because of our the self-imposed stigma we all have as individuals. And that includes me, by the way. I'm saying we're all part of it. It's not that you've mastered anything. It's because what if I give a wrong answer? What will my peers think of me? What will the trainer think of me? Neither of them is going to think anything. But this will be there in the mind. This environment is not fail-safe. People are not comfortable opening up in front of a alternate audience. This fail-safe tendency goes away by creating games. I'll tell you how. Let's say there are 30 people in an audience. You create 5 tables of 6 people each. The 6 people, it's more like a chat session. You reduce the level of failure to much lower. It's just 5 more people. They're all friends chatting in one small corner. Nobody's going to be listening to their what each one says, as in like they'll not be exposed if they give something wrong. And secondly, when they play a game, depending on the answers they give, they'll either score points or they will lose points. And game is one such thing where failure or losing points is perfectly a valid outcome. You are very comfortable here also, right? So the fail-safe environment that a game provides, nothing else can provide. And then you can design games that are to the level of the learner. By that, what I mean is, see, one of the other challenges of our teaching training systems is the curriculum is fixed, as in there will be a PowerPoint which fixed information content, or a textbook equivalent of it. But the learners will be all in different levels of pre-knowledge of that subject, right? I mean, they'll be both in terms of interest levels as well as the level of knowledge prior to prerequisites will be at different levels. How will it work if the trainer delivers training with this kind of an audience? With games, you can create multiple levels of games, beginner, intermediate, expert, etc., which can be administered to different sets of learners so that they are all comfortable. And the beginner learner, once they understand, they migrate to the next level and so on and so forth. The expert learner will get bored if they are given a beginner's level game. So you are sensitive to each level of the audience knowledge. So this is yet another example how games can be made to the level of the learner. So I just deviated a bit so that I'm able to highlight the benefits of games. There are many more, but I don't want to go into all of them. But I just thought I'll touch upon these. I'll come back to your main question now. Sorry, I deviated a bit.
Actually, you answered the question in your own way, Kartik. In fact, what you're saying is, if you learn in a smaller, fail-safe environment, your ability to open up rather than in a classroom setting where they may, based on which level I am, then I may switch off completely, or other way around, right? And it's also about learning from, if it's in a smaller setting, something they might have said that will stick to your mind, particularly when it is coming in a very jovial manner. I know we have been talking about your career from the start, right? As a developer, a manager, senior leader in their different firms. Right? If we look at it from 5 years down the line or 8 years down the line, where is this industry really moving towards? Any wisdom, any thoughts that you have?
You mean the software itself, or
Software industry.
okay? I'm not the best person to predict, but because you asked the question, let me try. I cannot answer for everything, but there is lots of exciting things happening. Small excitements that I'm aware of. So, for example, one of the things my mentor told me is get to know about low coding platforms. There are a lot of them emerging. Coding needs a lot of patience in getting the logic right, compilation, miscellaneous other things, right? So that's not for me. I've tried in multiple stages of my life. Now, when there is some low coding platform, you're making it easier for humans to code. A lot more people are going to code, okay, are going to take up to coding. So that is one exciting development. Another exciting thing is the connectivity overall, right? I mean, there's so many apps emerging. There's so much of information that is also being available to people, right? This internet, no, not internet, the social media platforms, particularly like LinkedIn and others, right? It is not sufficient that a development alone happens, but the dissemination that something is available should be known quickly. That is why I'm talking about both of these. Technology development alone, if it happens in one silo, doesn't reach, it's not going to be of any benefit. So that is another, so I get excited about the social media platforms. I mean, they have their pluses and minuses for sure, but I'm looking at the positives, right? How quickly information disseminates, or the good information disseminates, how innovative people are in general, right? There are people are starting their own startups in new spaces, solving small problems through technology, small or big, it doesn't matter. So these are holding exciting times. I'm not be able to predict 5-10 years from now, but overall it looks very promising. The fact that young engineers want to take an alternate route, they want to show their creativity, they want to learn new things, and they want to contribute in some form to the, by solving a real problem of the world. Working with a large client, you are solving a small part of a very large problem. And when you don't get that satisfaction of what you're doing, right? You're not connected to the big picture, you don't feel that happiness. Whereas if you develop even a small piece of code and that actually you're able to see the impact, right? Let's say you develop a library management system or some accounting system to a NGO, but NGO uses it based on the single developer thing. That satisfaction level is infinitely more than necessarily working for a large firm. We'll have to wait and see what the world is headed to, where the world is headed to.
Excellent, Kartik. In fact, with this podcast, I can imagine us having a couple of follow-ons. Given the time, I want to any final thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with? Anything that you would like to share?
One thing that is constant is keep learning new things. Be curious. Somewhere I read, I think I want to quote that exact phrase. There is this Thomas Friedman.
World is flat.
World is flat, right? Something, he gives 5 pieces of advices to the younger generation. He specifically calls it daughters of the world. One of the lines is passion quotient plus curiosity quotient is greater than IQ. PQ plus CQ is greater than IQ. It's not that IQ is less important. IQ is going to be important, but your passion to make a difference and being curious. Curious is also about humility, right? You don't know it all, but you are interested in knowing. A lot of times, curiosity builds so much of energy within the body. You don't have to be intelligent, honestly, but curiosity builds that amount of energy, and passion gives that amount of energy strength that it solves a problem. So PQ plus CQ is greater than IQ is one thing that I remember in mind. And the other 4 advices I don't immediately recollect, but I suggest you go through that article, the 5 pieces of advices by Thomas Friedman. And then the second thing, which I learned the hard way, but I think I want to still share. It's not that I've mastered it. Somewhere I saw a framework of holistic living, right? It's not, life is all not about job, career, technology. Some of us get immersed in that because it's a passion. We are humans, right? Individually, we are humans. So we need a balanced, integrated life. And there were 4 pillars for that. I want to emphasize that 4 pillars. One is skilling, learning, finance. These are all together. I mean, unless you continuously skill yourself, you're not going to be learning and skilling yourself. You're not going to be generating money, right? So these 3 go together. That's one pillar. Second is health. Health, there are 2 parts, physical health and fitness. And the second is mental well-being. Okay, these are in some sense interconnected. You need a good physical fitness to be mentally well and vice versa. But these 2 pillars we need to be aware of, and these are also again incidentally connected to the other pillars also. The third part is relationships. I cannot underemphasize or overemphasize, whichever way you put it, right, the importance of good relationships with everybody, be it family, be it friends, be it customers, be it vendors, with everybody in the world. Okay, and with oneself, of course. That starts with oneself. Because I'm just quoting a longest Harvard study that was conducted over 75 years. This seems commonsensical, but yet still is the most forgotten thing. And I am reminding for myself also as I talk to you. About 75 years they have done and determined what are the most, what is the top 3 determinants of happiness in a long-lived life. The top 3 factors were relationships, relationships, and relationships. If you don't have good relationships, no amount of money will keep you happy because the emotional part of our mind will be agitated. Even one single friction, just imagine, very commonsensical to imagine, it can be with your client, with your family member, with somebody that keeps nagging, and no amount of physical health or money, etc. will this thing. So third pillar is relationships. The fourth pillar is spirituality. In whatever way people understand that we are a part of, we've been sent for a purpose, we are connected, all we are doing is because of the infinite grace, the universal spirit, God, whatever you call it, right? The connectedness. If there have been phases where I have not been connected with the divine and it's been miserable. I mean, it doesn't mean religious connection, but that connection gives a sense of purpose to our lives, sense of service attitude, etc. Right? I mean, it gives us with that vitality inside, which also helps us in good times and helps us also navigate difficult times, which are a part of our lives. Good and bad times are going to be part of our lives. Both these, the only pillar we can bank on is spirituality. The other 3 are not going to help us. So all these are the 4 things I want to leave.
Wow, you summed it up so well, Kartik. Very, very well put, Kartik. And I've had so much of joy hearing and hearing your journey. And thank you so much for your time, Kartik. And I wish you all the best for your learn to play venture. And hope you get higher heights.
Thank you so much for considering me and interviewing me. It's a pleasure. I've learned a lot from you. As friends, we have interacted so much. Thanks. Hopefully, some of these are going to be helpful for all of us. It's a reiteration. In fact, I call this interview also a reiteration to myself. I also need to listen and practice, right? Some of these you learn, you forget, again, you come back, learn, start practice. Thank you once again so much.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.